At Eleanor's Legacy, it is important that we begin with a land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that Eleanor's Legacy, the organization, is situated on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Lenape tribe. I would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places near and far, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional caretakers of those lands as well. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the 30,000 New Yorkers, our neighbors, who have died already during the pandemic so far. And I'd also want to acknowledge Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Layleen Polanco, and the Black lives taken by police violence in the carceral state. If you would join me in a brief moment of silence, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate your support. This is June, and New Yorkers also celebrate Pride this month. The 51st anniversary of the Stonewall riots approaches on Sunday. And I want to thank several people who went above and beyond and made host committee contributions this evening. I want to thank Brenda Levin, Jay Lewis, Nancy Solomon, Deidre Sullivan, and Donna Zaccaro. Eleanor's Legacy has endorsed 54 women in this 2020 election cycle. Many were on the ballot in yesterday's primaries, and all of them are running because they want to be a part of the transformation that is coming for our city and our state. Your support tonight and from now until November, because we'll keep asking, because they're going to keep running, will make a difference for these 54 New York women all across the state. And now, for why we are gathered here this evening. We're all at home, and we all have been home, and we all define home in a different way. Here's what Eleanor Roosevelt had to say about home. She said, "Where, after all, do human rights begin? In small places close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood she lives in, the school or college she attends, the factory, farm, or office where she works. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, and equal dignity without discrimination. Without concerned citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world." That is what home meant to one New York woman, and our hope is you leave this evening having learned something about what home means to another New York woman, our Manhattan Borough president. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you a member of the Eleanor's Legacy Board of Directors, Rose Pierre-Louis, who's joining us from her home in Hell's Kitchen. Currently, the Chief Operating Officer at the McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research, Rose Pierre-Louis previously served in the administration of Mayor Bill de Blasio and was the Senior Advisor to the New York City Commission on Gender Equity, as well as the Commissioner of the Mayor's Office to Combat Domestic Violence. In the administration of Borough President Scott Stringer, Rose served as a Manhattan Deputy Borough President. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming from her home, Rose Pierre-Louis.
Thank you so much, Brette, for your warm introduction. Good evening, everybody. I'm so happy to be here for this conversation and just want to acknowledge the incredible work that Eleanor's Legacy is doing under Brette's leadership, and certainly our chair, Donna Zaccaro, and our incredible members of the staff, and of course, the board of directors. When I heard I had the opportunity as a member of a circle of women in service to introduce someone who, to me, is the embodiment of public service and a public servant, and who we all strive to be for those of us who choose to be in the public sector. And I heard that it was none other than Gale Brewer, of course. I jumped at the opportunity, and as you know, Gale is the 27th president of the Borough of Manhattan, and she has an incredible legacy and history of impacting all parts of the city, from technology to her time in the city council to her time as a staffer, working in the public advocate's office, working for David Dinkins. She's just an incredible person in the way that she approaches and cares about communities and constituents and the issues that are of importance to us as women, as people of color, and certainly as New Yorkers. And I've had the opportunity to not only be a constituent of Gale during her time as a city council member, but certainly as borough president. She is an extraordinary leader that is a force of nature, that I say that no matter what borough she's in, she gets the biggest claps than anybody else, because it is an acknowledgement. Okay, yes, Brett. Okay, Brett, I see you. An acknowledgement of the incredible leader that she is in all spaces. And I would say that during this time, during COVID-19, that she has shown our borough president what leadership is about, from really mobilizing the office and really getting out into the community and doing that selflessly, and putting the interest of New Yorkers and Manhattanites at the forefront, from distributing food immediately to distributing thousands of masks to elevating conversations that were important to those most affected, and particularly for our small businesses that were especially hard hit. And I was just remarking the other day that while on social media, I see that Gale is in my neighborhood in Hell's Kitchen giving out masks, going to various bar locations in the Hell's Kitchen area, and it's late at night giving out masks. And I think that really speaks to who the Manhattan Borough President is, who Gale is. For me, she has given so much to us. Not only through Eleanor's legacy, through her kindness and her leadership, but for those of us who have chosen to go into this space, she's always acknowledged us, let us know that she sees us and that she supports us. So with that being said, I can't say enough about how much I love Gale Brewer, how proud I am of her and all that she does, not only for the borough of Manhattan and for the city. And with that being said, it gives me great honor to introduce the 27th borough president of the borough of Manhattan, Gale Brewer.
Thank you very much, Rose. And all the many two accolades could certainly be said about you and your history, and certainly the work that you're doing now at McSilver, working on the census and poverty. And I've seen the results. So thank you and congratulations. And I just want to say about Eleanor's legacy, I started with the National Women's Political Caucus. I would not be here without the women who elected me to the council, and it was from the National Women's Political Caucus. And it's such an honor to be part of Eleanor's legacy. What I've never done before is to talk about where I live. So I'm a little nervous because this is not my norm. I'm usually talking about somebody else and other places, but I'll do the best I can. I do have stories that are fun. So I live at 29 West 95th Street. We moved in here in the early 90s. It was empty, vacant since 1981. And so what we did was renovate, but we renovated right back to 1886. So if there's a hole in the wall from 1886, it's still there, because I'm very neurotic about things looking the same. So that's the context of this brownstone. What I'm going to do is just talk about some of the events that have taken place, because that's what I was asked to do. And I tried to put together fun stories. So in the back of this building is a garden. And you know how some people put down different kinds of mats or places where you could barbecue or have, events and open space. Not us. So what we did was we kept the garden just like it was. We had to take out I guess the dirt had been there since 1886. I don't know, but it wasn't too pleasant. So we took out all the dirt, but we kept the exact same outlook, which is basically plants in the middle and then a little rim around it. So there's not much space to go and have barbecue, but it's enough because I want it to be like it was. So many years ago, my predecessor, one of my predecessors, C. Virginia Fields, she was either in borough presidency or running for a second or third term, I can't remember, but we had an event here for her. And I'll never forget her looking at the garden and saying, "Who does this for you?" I said, "My family, we do it, Virginia." So that was kind of fun. And then the story that Brenda and others will never forget is the following. I think that one of the greatest elected women we've ever known is Gabby Giffords. And she is from the state of Arizona. And she won in Congress 2007 in the state of Arizona. And her second term began 2008 and obviously would go to 2010. So she was a brilliant Cornell, Scripps, Fulbright, Jewish, took over her father's tire company when he couldn't do it anymore. She was always supportive of having a gun, but of gun control. When I got to know her, she was married to Mark Kelly, who's now running for the U.S. Senate. He's an astronaut, and so is his twin brother. And the reason I got to know her was Oliver Coppell, who was a colleague of mine in the city council, knew her from the Jewish caucus of the Democratic National Committee. So Oliver needed a location in Manhattan to have a fundraiser for her. And I think it was 2010. Long story short, she stood in my living room and gave the most brilliant speech about how you win as a very progressive woman in a conservative district in a red state, and how you discuss immigration policy with the Minutemen along the border. And to win, only to face her district office in Tucson being broken into, almost bombed, probably by those same people, but we don't know, after she voted for President Obama's health care bill. And of course, she was shot on January 11th, 2011. I think Brenda will agree that she gave a speech like none other. This woman, she's still alive, thank God, but without the charisma that she was destined for at an earlier situation. So I just want to say, I think that was probably the most memorable event in terms of a fundraiser that I've ever been to, because you were looking at presidential material, no kidding. Another one was Tom Perez. Now, what happened here was that he is Dominican. Congressman Espaillat, Dominican, wanted a quiet place to discuss the race when he was running for chair of the Democratic National Committee. And so we invited as many DNC members from the city whom we could find, and they all came in the afternoon and had a good discussion. And as you know, he's now the chair. But there was a second evening meeting. We organized dinner, that's how I remember it. And it had included, at that point, the other candidate who was then, I think, anointed as his deputy, Congressman Keith Ellison. Obviously, Tom Perez won. Representative Ellison, as I said, became the sort of titular deputy, left Congress in 2018, and he's now the Attorney General in Minnesota, handling the George Floyd case. So these are certainly memorable events as far as I'm concerned in our house. There are so many other fundraisers. We've had sort of the headquarters during different elections by the Hotel Trades Council, the Working Families Party, I think it was about 14 years ago when they first had their GOTV here. And how much things don't change, because they supported Governor Cuomo, but they needed an Upper West Side place so they could get themselves on the ballot, working with the governor. And you know how that story goes, because we're all political on this call. We've had the coordinated CAM of the West Side political clubs. Why? Because in the current commercial real estate market, all these clubs used to have headquarters, but they no longer do. So we became the headquarters almost every election for them. We've done Mayor de Blasio a couple of times, but the best of all was a movie. So it was 2005, I think. Robin Williams and Sandra Oh, and it was called The Night Listener. It came out in 2006, and you can go and see it because it wasn't a hit. So it's very much available online. And they were here for a month, Robin Williams in particular, extraordinarily friendly, extraordinarily gifted in just as a human being. And his passing is such a loss. He would sit on the stoop and he would talk to the dogs, and he would talk to everybody coming by. And then he had a thing with sneakers. There was a small tent outside that was put up for the studio. And I swear people brought him sneakers every single day. I don't know what he did with them all, but he loved every pair. The movie went on to Sundance. It's obviously filmed in our house and a house in Vermont. But if you look at it, you'll see lots of the 95th Street house. It was deemed too long, so it was cut at Sundance, but it never went to anything, I think, but television screens. In terms of, we had a bed and breakfast for a while, but it wasn't clear that it was legal. And I was in the city council. I said, oh, no, I'm not doing this for very long. But we started out with the dentist. One of the people who came was a dentist from Minnesota, and I swear that every one of his patients visited us. But the best was the following. We had many guests, but this was also fascinating. We had a service. I think the woman, she has passed, but I think her husband was in the in the one of the Democratic clubs on the West Side. So that's how I heard about her service. And they showed up. They were Asian. They came with 2 rollers, and we assumed they had come from the airport. Just by chance that night, we were having a fundraiser, and for the love of me, I can't remember. I think it was for a nonprofit group, but I can't really remember. And before I knew it, the wife of the couple had been to the grocery store. She had bought tons of fruit, and she didn't speak much English. All of a sudden, she was in the kitchen just cutting up the fruit, and she made the most beautiful, stunning fruit platter you have ever seen. I did not ask her to help. She just appeared and started doing it. And then she went upstairs and she reappeared for the reception in an absolutely gorgeous, elegant kimono. And, we didn't know why she had been so gracious. We had no idea about anything. Well, it turned out that this couple had not come from the airport. They had been staying at the Stanhope, and they wanted to, quote unquote, see the real New York City. So they had booked a bed and breakfast at 29 West 95th Street. So we figured out later that his name was Yoshio Tanjaki. He is the architect of the redesign of MoMA and one of the most famous architects in the world. He dressed all in black. Other guests, every year we have Thanksgiving, and we have Norwegian friends. My sister's married to a Norwegian. And either these friends are working at the UN or they're come from Norway just for Thanksgiving. So one year we invited the French consul general, and she came for dessert after the embassy had their dinner and just added a lot to our Thanksgiving. We have nonprofits here all the time, and my favorite is Vocalese. They have come for 10 years. Now, what is Vocalese? Vocalese is a nonprofit that works with very talented musicians and vocalists, some of whom are on Broadway. And what they do is for free, they go to senior centers and nursing homes and wherever seniors are either cooped up or just need some friendly support. They can sing. So every year, and they don't meet each other in any other environment. This is their holiday party at the beginning of December. They take over the whole house. And they bring their instruments, and they bring a piano, and Broadway actors and musicians and vocalists. And what a joy. It's like going to a concert. And they love singing for each other, and they just brighten the entire house for like an entire evening. The other thing about our street, 95th Street, is that every year we have an annual Halloween party. We close the street. There's one particular building that has the most phenomenal speakers and music. It is delightful, loud, and cheerful and phenomenal. We get thousands of families because we have a lot of candy. And you know how it is in New York. If you get a reputation of having something, then it continues. And we all have candy. And for like 10, maybe 15 years, my friends have come from around the neighborhood, not just neighbors immediate. And they join us on the stoop year after year after year, as well as neighbors too. And they give out candy, and then we have dinner afterwards. What a tradition. It's been going on for years. Here we are, 2020, at the height of the pandemic. We couldn't go to our office, but many from the city to generous companies were donating masks. And so I think at least maybe 100,000 masks were delivered here, and then we went all over the city to give them out. And talking about the city and the pandemic, all of us clapped at 7 o'clock. But across the street, there's a gentleman, I do not know his name, which is embarrassing, but he lives right across the street. I don't think he has missed one evening taking a spoon and some kind of a dish and clapping. And I learned from my other neighbor, the reason he does it is his daughter is a doctor, and she's been an essential worker at a local hospital the entire time. So he's doing it for her and for all the other workers who have been such heroes in this incredible pandemic. The other aspect of this house is I have friends who come pretty often. They're called the Ventoffs, and the Ventoffs are Dutch, and the most recent is probably in his late 20s, early 30s. His name is Philippe Ventoff, but so was his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather. And his great-grandfather was my grandfather's best friend. They were in shipping together. And then his grandfather and my father, they were both in World War II, one in Europe, one here, both fighting the Nazis. And my father and his grandfather, in this case, became really close friends. And they toured around the United States after the war, World War II. And then his father, who's my generation, and I would spend many summers with them in either the south of France or in Holland. And then his 5, 6 siblings, there's a big family, has come here over the years many, many times in terms of their back and forth. So most recently, Philippe has been here, and he now works in Paris for a large consulting firm, but he's able to go back and forth for his work. So to have that generation come back and forth has been very, very special to me and that family. So this house is old, been renovated, but right back to the holes and the challenges of an old house that I don't want to lose its bones or the way in which it has been preserved. It's obviously in a historic district, but the inside is not allowed to be landmarked and shouldn't be. So that's the story, and I want to say many women's organizations, National Women's Political Caucus in particular, way back in the 70s and 80s had events here. Not here, I'm sorry, but had events that I have sponsored. So wherever I am living, I try to make sure that people understand that they're welcome. So I hope you understand how much the women's movement means to me, and how one person living in a very special place in the great borough of Manhattan, and how we're always open and welcoming to whomever wants to have an event here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Gale, for sharing some stories about who has walked across the threshold at 29 West 95th Street in, I guess, about 34 years, or so, in about 34, 35 years. But as much pride as you have of West 95th Street, Elizabeth Caputo, who's tuned in this evening, she wants to claim West 96th Street is the best block for Halloween celebrating and trick-or-treating, and is looking forward to rivaling West 95th Street this October. So what I appreciate is I'm joining you all from my home in Crown Heights, but the passion for the Upper West Side, West 69th Street. What did I say? Yeah, West 69th Street. Elizabeth, making sure I either say it correctly or say it sufficient. The passion for the Upper West Side is very clear from not just Gale, but from everyone who's joining us this evening. So Gale, Melanie McAvoy asks, you just shared and you ended on a strong call to action that all of us are welcome. Have you ever said no to hosting an event or a party? And if so, why?
We've had a lot here. Yes, sometimes, when you have some groups that, yes, we have said no. I think during the bed bug, we have the pandemic of horrible healthcare issues, but we did have a bed bug pandemic, if you remember. And I remember people would want to have events during that. No, thank you. So yes, we did during that time period. I did not want bed bugs in my house, so we did say no. Yes.
Well, we appreciate that. So I have a few more questions for you before I go back to all of the Q&A. So everyone who has additional questions, drop them in there and we'll go to you. You are famously a woman about the island, and your schedule is jam-packed every day, but now you've been home for 3 months, or you were home for 3 months. Is there anything you learned about West 95th Street that maybe you didn't know before, or has your perspective changed at all?
I mean, I can say that I have great respect for the stores that stayed open, the pharmacy, the deli, the bodegas, the small, just incredible, hardworking individuals, some of whom got sick but still managed to keep the doors open. I think that was what really was impressive. I don't know that I learned. I mean, I've never worked so hard. We all felt that way. I thought I was going to have some time to, do some reading, but because of the challenges of the seniors, the food, the small business, the healthcare, the PPE, them all. It was way more than I think any of us would have guessed in advance. So it's not like anybody went out to see anything because we were so working so hard, to be very honest with you. So when people talked about doing jigsaw puzzles, I didn't have time to breathe. But it was too quiet. You almost felt death hanging over you. That's what I felt about it, because it was quiet here. And it was frightening, in my opinion.
All right, so we have another question from Melanie. And as I said, if you put it in the Q&A, we'll ask them, and we'll give you a chance, questioners, to ask the question of Gale yourself and chat with her. Maybe you haven't had a chance to, since you haven't had a chance to see her at events lately. All right, so Melanie McAvoy, your second question that you sent in.
Every time I've been to your home, it seems like Cal's in the kitchen making like something looking amazing, some food. And I just wondered, I've never asked this, does he usually do all the cooking?
He does a lot of the cooking, yes. I do. We do shopping, and Mo, my son, helps sometimes when he's here. He's in Buffalo most of the time, as you know. But I would say that, yes, Cal does a lot of the cooking. I do sometimes a lot of the shopping, but we're not fancy cooks. So, I mean, it's pretty basic. When I go to some people's houses and they've cooked this immense dinner, I'm like, oh my goodness. So no, it's basic. We're both basic cook chefs. Chef would be a strong word for our ability.
All right. The next question comes from, we're keeping in the family, comes from Vanessa McAvoy, who's joining us all the way from the West Coast, the west side of the country. And so I'll go to Vanessa. Vanessa, you want to ask your question for Gale?
Sure, Gale. It's also a Cal-related question. I want to know if Cal eats as much candy as he passes out at Halloween.
No, he doesn't eat hardly any candy at all. He eats salad and more salad, and he's very healthy on the yogurt, on the hummus side. No, we just go and give it out because we want this block to beat 69th Street.
All right, this is from an anonymous attendee. So I suppose, unless you want to raise your hand, anonymous attendee, we'll find you so you can ask it yourself. But perhaps if we don't, I guess I'll just go ahead. This is a sincere question that all of us want to know. What's the best thing we can do to help rebuild the city during these summer months as citizens who want to help?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've been talking about this on so many different platforms. I would say a couple of things. First of all, we have to find a way so that in September, if it takes that long, we're ready, because on the other hand, for example, you have to go to your local restaurants. We need to find a way for the young people to have summer youth employment programs, so that pushing the city council and the mayor to fund them and to fund the camps for the young people. The idea of young people just being in the streets and not going to be home is inconceivable. So summer activities need to be funded. Businesses need to get as much support as possible. I was just saying earlier, right now the businesses, they can have an outdoor cafe if they have room. Then they can, if they have a bus lane or a bike lane, which a lot of them do, they can go to the next lane, get the cars to move, put a barrier there and put in your table and chairs. That's rough. That's rough. But they can't go inside until who knows when, sometime in July, if then. And the other thing you can do, I think, this summer is to think about the future. And there's a couple of things. What exactly are we doing about police community relations? What exactly are we doing to make sure that it's not the same old normal? And what are we doing in terms of what healthcare looks like in the future? Because this underlying condition cannot continue. Those are some of the things. I don't know how school's going to be. There's only 49% students allowed in the building in September. So is that 3 shifts? Is that 1 week on, 1 week off with some virtual? Is that kind of blended learning going to work? There are so many questions. Some people are pretty pessimistic that, you know, New York City could end up like Detroit, or some people are like saying, we're going to bounce back, don't worry. It's both. And I have to say, I'm worried because I don't see I see a lot of fussing, but I don't see the long-term plans that I think need to be set in motion.
Gale, I'm going to, could you just, I was listening, but I have to admit, I don't have school-age children. So I've been paying attention, but not to all the fine print. In the fall, the current proposal is what percentage of students?
Only 49% of the students, I don't know, say you got 500 kids in the school, whatever, sometimes they have 4,500, depending on the building.
Yeah,
but
right.
49% can be in that building.
That is a challenge.
Yes, so then what happens to the balance? And how do you work that out?
Well, to return to a point of pride about the Upper West Side, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, so I wanted to invite Elizabeth Caputo to just put another plug in for West 69th Street and the glories one can find there. Elizabeth?
Sure. Hi, Gale, and hey, everyone. Thank you for your comments on this, and also just on how you think we can rebuild. I totally agree with you. I remain optimistic, and especially on the schools issue, I think it's going to be an issue that we have to address, not just here in our neighborhood on the Upper West Side, but throughout the city and throughout the borough. So I don't really have a question. I just think it's great to hear from you, and it's great to see you virtually tonight. So
thank you, Liz.
Gale, the Gale fandom stretches even into the middle of the country. So I'll turn the microphone over to Judy Mallory Sabo, who wants to offer her greetings to you. Aunt Judy.
Hi, Gale.
Hi.
I am Melanie McAvoy's niece, and my sister and I stayed with you when we came for Melanie's wedding shower and surprised her mom, our other sister, delightfully so. And you and Cal are the most amazing hosts. I've seen pictures of your garden you were talking about, and it's beautiful. And I enjoyed coming and helping on your campaign. My grandson and I came and worked a meet and greet at someone's house. Yeah. And Cal taught him how to shake hands. This young man, he did. I loved it. And he is now a graduate of Michigan Tech University. And then I worked on another campaign, came in from Kalamazoo, and worked your inauguration, which was amazing. It was such a wonderful thing to see. So I've been following you for the last 2 terms and just wanted to say hi.
Well, I appreciate it deeply. We remember having a lot of fun sitting around the table talking to you in the kitchen. Just like every other family, we end up in the kitchen all the time. And also we know how great Melanie is, and I made her even greater to know what a great family she comes from. So thank you for all your support, and it made our relationship with her even more special.
Yes, thank you. And I must say, I love your governor, and I love our governor, Gretchen Whitmer, and both of them have been on the forefront for the COVID, and I wish the other governors would follow their lead.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, we agree.
So to bring it closer to home, thank you, Aunt Judy. We have a question from the Upper West Side. Marjorie Horn, a denizen of 78th and Broadway. Marjorie, did you want to share your comment and question, please?
Yes, please. Gale, how are you?
I'm fine, Marjorie.
I'm very sorry we didn't get to bring you to the Tony rehearsal this year. So that's one that's going to be a long time getting that one in together. But mine's a more immediate question. I live in the building where La Caridad is, the Chinese Cuban restaurant.
Yeah.
And we just found out that they are not ever going to reopen.
Oh, boy.
Which is heartbreaking. Part of it is their money, is the $100,000 rent or whatever over this time, which is one part. And is there a way that someone in the neighborhood, elected or whatever, can reach out to them for help? The other part of this, which is even more disturbing, is that they had an amazing delivery of takeout part, but when they closed, they never stayed open for delivery because they were getting threats because of being Chinese.
Oof.
And I don't know, a lot of their waiters are elderly. The young men that were the delivery boys are out of work. I don't know what they're going to do, but just trying to reach out to see how to help them individually, if it's at all possible.
Well, I certainly will reach out. That's a horrible story. I'm trying to be optimistic. I will reach out to them. We will see if we can figure out what we can do to bring them back by some miracle, or at least make sure their workers are somehow taken care of. I can say, without getting into all because this is mostly a different kind of story, but the PPE, the city's program were very challenging. And then we went, even before the pandemic hit New York City so hard, we all had lunch constantly in Chinatown. Because if you remember, there was a horrible anti-Asian backlash because this pandemic was supposedly coming from China. It was horrible. And I didn't realize that the racist, how deep it is on all fronts. To have an institution, because basically that's what La Claridad is, it's an institution in our neighborhood.
Totally.
To have this kind of racism directed towards them, it's turning my stomach. There is some horrible statistic about 50% of our businesses not making it, and they're all the mom and pops. So I'm glad you told me, and I will reach out tomorrow. That's so depressing.
Thank you. I'll just an aside. One of my friends in the building is could do a GoFundMe. He's very good at it and willing to, and we in the building would like them. So however we mesh.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Pino wanted to chime in and let you know that she's listening, and she too has been going to La Caridad and is eager and interested in joining the community response to make sure that the family and the restaurant is supported. And she thanks you, Gale, for supporting the small businesses of the Upper West Side. We have a final question from up in Harlem. Kim Watkins. Kim has a question about schools. So Kim, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Cool, thank you. Hi, Gale.
Hi, Kim, you know schools. Yeah.
I do know schools. But I mean, parents have had such a remarkable couple of months, remarkably exhausting, remarkably, a remarkable discovery of how to become teachers. And so it's been really interesting. One of the stranger conversations that I was in happened to be a parent support group with a woman who was on the school board in New Orleans during the post-Katrina period of time. And we got on this call because, as you know, already in Harlem, there's a huge concentration of charter schools. And one of the things that we ended up talking about was how these natural disasters could really allow privatization of the public school system to grow, to fester even to an even greater degree. Because as we're seeing every day, it seems we're seeing more and more budget cuts coming down the pipe in terms of our schools and everything else. But is there a way to figure out how to combat the possibility of greater privatization given the potential hollowing out of a lot of our schools already through the next couple of school years, probably? What do you think about that? How might we sort of?
Well, I'd love others to chime in. I must admit, I'm such a government person, so I'm not a good bellwether. But as we're protesting, and I went on as many as I could, but I obviously can't go. All I could think of was these thousands of people. I understand the challenge and the mantra of the moment because of Mr. Floyd and the horror of racism. But all I could think of is CUNY gets screwed, the classroom gets screwed, I don't have social workers, how in the world do we not have affordable housing? And I could go on with this list, right? And why in the world are we not listing all of these and then, tying ourselves to the barricades and the fences to make sure that these things get funded? Because that's how, I don't understand how we can live without all of the above, right, in our city. So the notion that we're cutting in the classroom is insane. And I believe, and you know better than I, that at 52 chambers, a whole lot of those contracts really could be cut. And so, the answer to your question is, it's not only going to the charters and going to the private schools. Families are leaving the city, Black, white, and Latino, to go to schools where they are not stuck with, is it going to be, this week I'm in and that week I'm out. So the mayor was very nasty about that issue, not thinking it's a problem. It is a problem. And the problem is to be secure, quote unquote. They're going to send their kids to charter schools. And I have the same feeling about them that you do, particularly one that has gotten quite a bit of press recently. Right. So I guess you just need a new vision. I don't know how to answer your question because it's beyond frustrating, both the DOE and CUNY. We don't talk about CUNY much, but the future of the city are those young people, and the CUNY needs to be fully funded. It's insane not to do the funding for both of those in the classrooms, not in the central headquarters. I don't know what else to say because I don't have enough power or clout over it, but I feel beyond angry that this is happening to the students. At this point, that's all I can say because I'm so frustrated. I think the city council is trying, but having been there, and I think Rose knows what I'm talking about because she's been in those halls of power also, you're really beholden to the mayor who's omnipresent and very powerful, and it's very hard to counter. If the city council decides to do their own budget, that would be very interesting. It did happen almost once under I think Peter Malone. So I think we have to see what comes out of this discussion. But the charter schools are a real menace in most cases.
Thank you.
Gail, I want to say and let you know that maybe some of the solutions comes from these conversations with community because Elizabeth Caputo has popped in and I think my colleague Caileigh put it in the chat for everybody. Thinking about La Caridad and small businesses, Elizabeth recommends being in touch with CB7, Community Board 7, especially Mark Diller and Linda Sue, and Elizabeth shared their email addresses. So if everyone looks in the chat for those, especially Marjorie or Lisa, I'm sure Elizabeth and CB7 would like to work together to find solutions. to the best of everyone's abilities. Speaking of children, Vanessa McAvoy, takeaway from this evening, listening to you, Gale, is she's more mortified than ever that one of her children threw up on your rug in the upstairs. Mortified by that, but I think what we've learned is that as Brenda Levin says, your heart is big, and it contains all 1.5 million residents of Manhattan. But the heart is the home, and home is where the heart is. And clearly your heart is on the Upper West Side at 29 West 95th Street. And I wanna thank you for taking some time to share with us what that house and that block and that neighborhood mean to you. As Rose said in her introduction, that you are a force, and people show up when they know Gale Brewer will be there. And it's clear that the challenges ahead for this city require all of us to show up and keep showing up. And you let us know, and we'll be there with you.
Well, thank you, Brette, for your leadership. Every time we see you up on the stage or in a discussion, we know that we're in good hands. And I think you put together, you know, a lot of these women would not be elected, and goodness knows we need more if it wasn't for Eleanor's legacy and the board. And Rose, thank you for your introduction, way over the top, but I look forward to working with you on the census. I'm a little afraid of Rose because she was the one who got in the last census for Manhattan to be #1. And now that stupid Staten Island is #1. So now I'm really working hard to keep up with Rose so that Manhattan beats Staten Island in terms of the percentage of filling out the forms. Just so you know, Rose, I'm on it as best I can. And I think about you every single day as we try to get Manhattanites. Please, Manhattanites, fill out that form. I love Staten Island, I love Jimmy Otto, but I'm also competitive, and Manhattan should be #1, just like Rose made it #1 10 years ago.
I'm happy to help. I'm here. I love the census.
Well, fill out your census. It's the least all of us can do on this call. And Rose, maybe if you share the memo that you pulled together with 10
I learned from Gale. I take it out Gale's playbook.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everyone. And as we said at the beginning, this is what we hope to be the first of many. There are New York women all over who have, if you get the opportunity to see them at work in motion in the city, you come to admire their leadership. But I think when we get to learn about the reasons why they do the work they do and why they work so hard for our city and our state, it's even more of an impact for this community that we're all building. So thank you, Gale, and thank you, Rose, and thank you everyone who joined us this evening, and thank you for your time. And we will always have